I'm going to take a moment now just to summarize. We've talked about the Biden-Harris progress from 21 to 23, focusing on that major legislation, the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS Act, technology focused, and also the Inflation Reduction Act. We went back and took a look at the Unity Task Force plans of 2021 and focused on what hasn't been accomplished and what needs to be accomplished in 4 major areas. And those 4 major areas also, in a sense, only scratch the surface, because there are other issues we haven't even mentioned yet, like the necessity to double down on our efforts to improve voting rights, to ensure racial justice, including reparative justice, criminal justice, to eliminate gun violence, and to focus on what we can do about defense spending, perhaps allocating some billions of dollars to our #1 national security threat, which is the climate crisis we face. And of course, it also includes the Equal Rights Amendment, reproductive rights, and there's more. I'm going to stop the share again for a minute after that second segment, and enough maybe to fill 2 plates full for a progressive agenda for 2024. And I'd like to invite everyone again to chime in with what do you think about our unfinished business? What should be our priorities? What must we do to get into a position so that we can really finish the business?
Are we raising our hands or just?
Terry, go ahead.
All right. From a communication standpoint, I think that one of the big challenges is we have such a huge plate with so many different dishes, if you want to call it that, on that plate, that we can overwhelm people. So I'm always looking for the top 3, maybe 4, but that's really pushing it. In other words, do fewer things better, tell a story better, a little more depth, maybe less breadth. But I'm never quite sure which of those 4 should be it. I mean, we can look at exit polls and see if climate change, for example, made it into the top 4, that kind of thing. But what does this group think? What are the top 3? No, I'm going to leave it at 3. What are the top 3 things to focus on for 2024?
Excellent question. Reminds me of our beginning of this year proDA Progressive Priorities Survey. And some of you here, I know, did complete that. Whether you did or didn't, let's take it away for a couple of minutes. And I see that Liz Blackburn is chiming in with voting rights. Liz, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, some of you may know this. I do the social media side of DA China and the Disability Caucus, and I supplement Annie on Wisconsin. One thing I'd like proDA to do is get a little louder on the voting rights and on our social media. And I think perhaps if someone here or other people could contribute to that, especially on the infamous X and other websites we may be getting into, that would be a good thing. I'd like us to blast everywhere, because progressives, we know this about ourselves. We tend to skew the negative. We need to do some positive. We need to get some messaging out there that's powerful, that makes people drive the attention to our website, to join our proDA caucus and get that voting rights solidified in all the places. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Liz. And I personally am hoping that in the state of Wisconsin, that the Supreme Court, with its new member, is challenged to consider voting rights issues, maybe in 2023, 2024, because later we're going to take a look at a map and we're going to see that the state of Wisconsin is a gray state where there are big hopes for what might be accomplished in 2024. Are there others who have perhaps other top 1, 2, 3 priorities from our very full plate of progressive agenda items for 2024. If you go ahead, Haley.
I was just going to say that I think it's easier in some ways to group things together in terms of like a pro-democracy, anti-corruption kind of platform, because, you know, again, things like voting rights, it's about who can participate in our democracy. Supreme Court reform is about the same thing. Like, is your vote and the policies you enact as a citizen going to be the final say, or is there going to be a Republican supermajority conservative court doing what it wants anyway? And I'm surprised that that isn't a stronger message from Democrats at the moment.
Thank you very much, Haley. My wheels are turning a little bit, and I'm remembering that there are recent polls suggesting that some voters are not too excited yet. And if we give them the opportunity to vote, one could also ask, what can we do in order to give them the motivation to vote? And that might bring us back to some of the policies, some of the issues we're talking about, and doing what we can as Democrats and progressives to demonstrate that we can be trusted to deliver for everyday Americans. I see that Alan Siegel has raised his hand. Alan, take it away.
Well, I think there's a there's a whole bunch of issues here that are not being addressed, and I think that the DNC needs to put more money, put more emphasis on local initiatives like what has happened in Wisconsin, and where issues about voting rights are only going to be like, those issues are only going to be dealt with if there's funding to be able to like support the activities that ensure that voting rights are ensured, okay? I mean, there's a big problem with the Democratic Party, which is indebted to corporate America, okay? And this is a big problem because the country is so in debt because of the military industrial complex, okay, that all of these good things that the Democratic Party wants to be able to do, where's the money going to come from? Okay, and this leaves the right flank of the party exposed, because this is what the MAGA Republicans have harped on from day one. Okay, so I think like Bernie Sanders is the only one in the Democratic Party. Well, he's not even a Democrat, really. He's the only one that's really addressing these issues.
Thank you very much, Alan. Liz mentioned trying to be innovative and talk about things that are positive. I think Terry also suggested that. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit here too and say that I've been pretty impressed by the Patriotic Millionaires initiative to go out there in states like North Carolina that are purple, blue, sometimes red, and a swing state, and talk to people also about the need to consider fairer taxation of wealth in the United States. And Sue has raised her hand. After that, maybe time for one more, and then we'll continue on to the next segment.
I was just gonna say in response to Alan that you know, I think what was in Bernie's speech about like really like providing concrete action that makes a difference for everyday Americans, like that's really critical. Like the administration and the leadership needs to select some things that they feel are achievable, or force the Republicans to vote against those things, right? So that we have that story to tell. And then there's another piece to this, which has to do with like how campaigning is done. My understanding from folks in other state parties, particularly with like rural areas, there is some concern about like where the DNC is investing in terms of how campaigns, and like not enough in the ground game and more in like big advertising and stuff like that. It's not an area I know a ton about, but I know I've been hearing people say that they are really concerned about that, and that important ground efforts are not necessarily getting the resources that they need.
I'm looking at our group and seeing that Sue Kronenfeld is also here today, and that's great. And she writes every week. She has a post text that I'm getting ready to post tomorrow on campaign finance reform. And Sue, it's up to you whether you'd like to say a few words about that. I think it would be great if you could let us know. Also, recently you've written about some success.
Yeah, I'll jump right in now if that's okay. So some of you may know there's a video by Jennifer Lawrence under if you go to representus.com, it explains about how our elections are very broken, as we all know, but the way to fix them, even for the federal elections, tends to be at the state level, because that's where elections are actually regulated in each state, even if they're for federal office. So I've been focusing in my posts a lot lately on individual actions in individual states. I believe the last one I gave you was about a mayor in Oregon who was actually found not properly reporting a payment to a campaign manager. But I mean, I think the mayor, at least she would like to, cast herself as a progressive, and she is very much in favor of, anti-corruption. And so there was a website that Oregon put together to help voters keep better tabs on campaign finance violations and things like that. So this mayor said, no, she's 100% in favor of the website. She paid her fine without a murmur, and on we go. And that's what we need to see. We need to see compliance in the law, which I think we'll all agree is a refreshing change sometimes. And we need to see some common sense solutions that will help voters really see what's going on in elections. I tried not to kind of horn in and jump in about, but if we don't fix the elections, it becomes academic to even try to fix anything else, because eventually we'll just run out of possibilities to do anything. It'll just be a matter of the big guys pushing everybody around. Sorry, that was a little disorganized, Bruce, but I mean that's just one sample of the local actions. And according to that Jennifer Lawrence video and the scholarship behind that, the more local actions and state actions that get passed, the more likely action is to be taken even at the federal level, because as the groundswell comes up, Congress tends to respond to that and pass something corresponding at the federal level.
Thanks very much, Sue. I love to think about that tipping point that Jennifer Lawrence talks about, where if you get to 20, 21, 22 states, then it seems as though it tips and it becomes federal legislation too. And she gives some excellent examples of how that has worked in the past and how it could work with anti-corruption combined with campaign finance reform. Alan, would you like to chime in again for a minute or so?
Yeah, I just want to say something really quickly, and it's something very specific in relationship to climate change, okay? That one of the areas that is important in terms of climate change has to do with people's access to public transport, okay? So if we're putting money into the infrastructure and we're only putting it into highways and not into public transport, that's not addressing climate change. And I just read today in the US and the UK are at the bottom, 19 and 20 of 20 nations in terms of people's access to public transport. I mean, that's like, it's incredible. How can an advanced country like the US not be addressing public transport and creating jobs at the same time?
Thanks very much, Alan. That reminds me too of what the Biden-Harris administration has said, and that is that we need a whole of government, whole of society approach at federal, state, and local levels. I was in Champaign, Illinois at the state level, looking at what was going on there a little bit this summer. And there the bus system is transitioning to zero combustion engine, kind of a mix of electric and hydrogen buses. So I think there are some glimmers of hope, but Alan certainly is right that we have a lot more progress ahead of us. Going to take some time now to listen to Antar Keith, who is ready to sign in too with some comments about reparative justice as part of our progressive agenda for success. Antar?
Everybody, thank you, Bruce, and thank you all for being here today. I just wanted to speak very briefly on the 60th anniversary on the MLK-led March on Washington and the historic I Have a Dream speech. What we know and what we remember from the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was that it wasn't just a feel-good moment. It was a demand. It was demand coalesced around legal rights, Civil Rights Act, and Voting Rights Act. The goal was to mobilize and make demands and put those demands on the White House and Congress to enact legislation that will bring about equality. Oftentimes, you know, when we commemorate MLK, we pat ourselves on the back by remembering ideals or soaring rhetoric, but we don't really have any applicable way to make those ideas known. And many of us in America have actually deluded ourselves into thinking that MLK's dream was actually realized, was actually, you know, reality. Well, Jacksonville is a firm reminder that we are far from that dream. In fact, we are closer to the opposite, the nightmare, if you will. All across the nation, people are losing rights to bodily, you know, autonomy, rights to a fair, you know, living wage, rights to just living their normal, what would have been their normal lifespan, honestly. People's promise and people's potential is being stunted by law, by policy. This commemoration, we need to really reinvest in what it means to think about this dream. We need to have firm actions. We need to think about policies that have been eroded over time as a result of, you know, too much acquiescence, too much complacency. Things like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, things like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, things like HR 40, the federal reparations bill. These are the things that really need to be focused on. Things like ending college debt through student loans, bringing about Medicare for all. These are the very policies that MLK would have been championing were he not wiped out because of systemic racism and white supremacy, which is very much in existence today. We need action, and we need to really coalesce our desire for a better world today. Bernie Sanders has supported President Biden as a bulwark against encroaching fascism in America. At the same time, Senator Sanders has also warned Democrats to not sign on with the corporate Democrats in Congress. We're at an interesting point, an inflection point. So strategically supporting, if we're going with Senator Sanders, a president firmly in the wing, the leader of corporate Democrats, supporting this individual, this figure, while rebuffing all attempts to kind of coalesce with the other corporate Democrats in his ilk. I think we're in a very difficult point, in fact, where we're forced to drink some of the poison that we've been trying for 60 years to push back against. It's a bitter pill to swallow. You know, we really have to think, what is the long-term strategy? How can we make our demands met? How can we bring about the structures, the fibers, the systemic layers to actualize MLK's dream without intoxicating ourselves, poisoning the body politic of the progressive movement within America, and really avoid succumbing to the kind of complacency that so many left-leaning progressive organizations have succumbed to in the past? How can we keep the dream alive without succumbing to the nightmare? And that's why we're here today. So, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, we're on the right path, but we shouldn't be complacent, and we should understand that Senator Sanders actually asked us to avoid making too many concessions to corporate Democrats while strategically voting for President Biden to hold off the apocalypse. But we shouldn't then imbibe this directive as, you know, everything's hunky-dory in the land of corporate Democrats. They are still the adversary, and progressive Democrats are the wave of the future. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you who contributed to the discussion in this segment, and also thank Antar Keith very much for kind of summarizing and giving us, in a sense, marching orders as we try to set our priorities, something that we're going to continue doing this fall in proDA. And we're going to talk more now about what we can do to get in a position so that we can help Democrats finish the job with a bold, progressive agenda for 2024. I'm going to go back and share my screen just one more time. This is what that 270 to win site shows us about the electoral map right now, and it suggests a kind of possible electoral outcome in 2024, which of course is far too early to rely on. However, it seems possible that when we get closer in the summer of 2024, that we'll still be thinking about Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and a couple of other states. As we move through the rest of this year, proDA is going to be thinking about this way of slicing the pie, and how we can help Democrats abroad, the Democratic Party, and progressive organizations in the United States to make sure that this is something that turns out with a strong win for Democrats at the top of the ticket. Let's continue then the Senate. We have quite some strong challenges. You can see there that there are maybe 47 Democratic seats, and then there are a bunch of questions about what will happen. Here, the gray refers to states where there aren't any Senate contests in 2024, but we have a Democrat in Montana, in Arizona, Ohio. We have close races, and then we're looking at places like Wisconsin, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania. How are we going to do there? And we're going to start thinking about those Senate races and how in red states we might be able to pick up victories in West Virginia, maybe in Texas, in Florida, to get above 50, 51, 52, maybe 53 would put us in a really sweet position to pass transformative change legislation and help us to finish the job after 2024. Then in the House, we see that there are also many challenges. Right now, we've lost our majority. It's very, very tight. We did pretty well in 2022, better than expected. Going into 2024, how are we going to do in some of these districts in Washington State, in Oregon, Central California, Southern Arizona, New Mexico, down there, parts of the southern Texas, places around Des Moines, Iowa, and a little north of Detroit in Michigan, and then in places where we got hurt in New York State in 2022, and then here in North Carolina will also be hotly contested House races. Is there a possibility that with progressive candidates who are speaking truth to power and talking about the real needs of working class people, that we can win Latino voters, win Black male voters, and win young people, win their trust in us, maybe get to 220, 225 or more seats in the House of Representatives? Going to stop here again. And that was a quick tour of the 270 to win 1 year before we get to that hot phase in 2024. And I'd like to open the floor again for discussion about what you think our chances are of winning a trifecta, presidency, Senate, and House in 2024. Having mentioned that word trifecta, I also want to say in 2022, in the midterms, Minnesota, Michigan, Maryland, and Massachusetts all won trifectas. And I believe they did so by giving their voters something to hope for, and now they are delivering on bold change in those 4 states. Is that something that can work at the federal level too? Would anybody like to raise a hand and chime in? Mohammed, so nice to see you. Please unmute and tell us where you are. Are you in Kenya?
Yes, I came back to Kenya, I think, less than a week ago. I think it's really hard winning a trifecta. I like our chances in the House.
Mohammed, I'm sorry for interrupting. Can you get a little bit closer to your microphone?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. What I was saying was, I think it's going to be a little hard winning a trifecta. I like our chances in the House, right? I think it was a lot of maps that were got and New York maps and, right, the cases that we won in the Supreme Court. I really like our chances of taking back the House. What I believe is Biden can easily win because I don't think anybody who voted against Trump can vote for Trump in 2024. But the only reason Biden will have chance is if we can mobilize our people who like Democrats and independents who align with Democrats, and that's the only way we can win. When it comes to the Senate, I think it's really hard, right? From my home state, Sharon Brown. I think, right, they're strong candidates, Sharon Brown, John Tester of Montana. They're very strong candidates in their states. I really think mobilizing the vote and making sure that, you put out all the stuff that Democrats, and especially, right, what we managed to do when Democrats held the White House, the House and the Senate, passing the first gun restriction in years, right, the climate bill, all of that stuff. I think we can really win, but it's going to be hard. I think out of the 3, the Senate will be the hardest, and the House would probably be the easiest to win.
Thanks very much, Mohammed. I'm also thinking about that Ohio State team, which you are a member, and how we have such really, really strong state teams, and how they are going to be playing a very important role in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere across the map. And I'm going to encourage us at the end of this meeting to consider joining teams like the Wisconsin State team. Liz, would you like to sign in again just with a few comments about what you wrote, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin?
Absolutely. I think everybody knows what has been happening in Arizona and Nevada, sorry, Midwest. And we saw what Sue said in the chat box too, our upsets in New York. We had a little bit of an interesting turnout in California, and we can't forget about 2021 and what happened in Virginia. So that means each one of us has to go back to our state team or our region, even if there's a state adjacent that needs help. They might have an independent, Democratic leaning progressive candidate or Democratic candidate that we don't know anything about. Tell your state team about it. Because as I think people were chatting about at the beginning of this call, we need people running and we need to know about them at the level to be able to promote them. And Wisconsin, I'm not as positive as my messaging is about Wisconsin. I'm really afraid we're going to lose our state majority or our state seats and have a Republican supermajority. But I'm also pulling for Tammy in 2024. I'm still looking at 2023 right now. I'm talking two different races here, but state teams, we need your support. We want your support. You can contact me. You can email states@democratsabroad.org, or you can just go to our website, check it out. And if you don't see a flag for your state, let us know, because we're looking to develop those. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Liz. And I hope we can develop in ways also with a very strong Democratic state party in Wisconsin and its leader to turn things a little bit more positive. And I think what I'm hearing is that we have a chance if we are able to convince young voters, Latino voters, Black voters, and working class voters that we really can finish the job. But in order to do so, we have to get out and vote, and we have to get out and vote big time. And then once we have done that, if we can get into that good position, then demand that the job be finished. Caitlin and Antar, take it away.
Hi. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. Yeah. So yeah, what I've noticed is there's a lot of contention in progressive circles in America. Many people have not forgotten nor forgiven the issue with the infrastructure bill and the bifurcation of it from hard corporate infrastructure and social spending, and the disaggregation of the social spending bill. This was considered a heavy blow to the progressive movement and those who are, mostly considered the have-nots. We've seen similar actions with railroad strikers and the ability of the federal government to command railroad workers to work whether they want to or not. This was seen as a betrayal of the working class from Amtrak Joe. And, there are many people on, progressive spectrum, and those who are at the closest proximity to pain, those who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, primarily Black and Latino voters, who are actually growing increasingly concerned and frustrated with the Biden administration. And, you couple this with, past policies that the president had made when he was a senator, and more relevant past statements that the president has made regarding people who are Black and Latino. And what you have is really the calling signs for people to really choose not to vote for Biden. This is a realistic predicament that the Democratic Party is in. There are many progressives who will not vote for Biden. They won't, because what has Biden done to win their vote other than be the guy who's not Orange Man? This is serious. What has Biden done to win over progressives? What has Biden done to win over Black Americans? These are really important issues that need to be discussed, because every single time Biden has had the opportunity to do what he said he was going to do, he conked out. He directed his White House press secretary to pivot whenever these questions were coming to her, and nothing has happened. We're just one legislative betrayal after the other. And now, what are we going to do? We can't, as Democrats abroad, we can't keep trying to do damage control for a president who really does not want to enact certain pieces of legislation. He had ample opportunity to pass an executive order for things like Roe v. Wade, things like the George Floyd policing bill, things like HR 40, things like the railroad worker strike, but he didn't do anything. What is he doing? You know, I mean, I could say what he does and where he wants to send the money, but it's not going to the Americans who will be voting for him. And Caitlin?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty long, and I guess I don't have, oh God, our cat's throwing up. That's great. Everyone can hear that.
Paper towel and throw that on the vomit.
Anyway, now I'm distracted. Yeah, but I guess that's pretty much mostly what I wanted to say. I mean, in terms of response to the question about winning a trifecta, I personally am not at the point where I feel that I can vote for Joe Biden. I think many people are in the same boat. I'm from Texas, so you know, we only down ballot only have Republican versus Democrat. We don't have any third party candidates down ballot. So I'm, you know, I'll definitely be voting for a lot of Democrats, but at the presidential level, I personally don't feel I'm at the point where I can do that. I did it I kind of like swallowed my vomit a little bit last time and did it. And I don't know, like, I'm kind of tired of feeling like we have to keep accepting really mediocre candidates because, like Antar said, the alternative is so bad. And, you know, I do feel like, for me, anyway, I just wanted to say that in case there's other people in this space who are thinking of or looking at third parties and stuff too, that, you know, I think there's a lot of discussions to be had. And just because we're in Democrats abroad, I don't think such subjects should be taboo. That's basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. And I'd also like to thank Caitlin for being a proDA follower of labor issues. And there have been some pretty impressive labor developments in the last 12 to 18 months. Most recently, the UPS Teamster workers, who have agreed now overwhelmingly to endorse the deal that they reached. And it could be that the labor movement will continue also to push for more progressive labor development in 23, going into 24 in ways that could mobilize working class voters. We're going to take one more comment from Alan, and then we're going to go to our calls for action.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what Antar said, because I think that this is really, this gets to the crux of the problem, okay? When the Democratic Party has the opportunity to jump in when there is a crisis situation, like, for example, in Ohio with a climate disaster, they were like pussyfooting around in terms of like, what are they going to do? I mean, and just leaves them vulnerable to the Republicans, Trump, and all of these like, all of these folks who like basically are opportunists when it comes to like some kind of vulnerable issue in terms of like national politics. Okay, there are things that need to be addressed and they need to be addressed on point, okay? And people need to speak loudly about the inequities that exist in this society. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. And I'm going to go back to share the screen for our final slide of the day.
Can I just jump in, Bruce, in response to Alan? I just wanted to share that I think in the whole sort of ecosystem, our political ecosystem in the States right now, I think some of the issue-oriented progressive movements are providing a really important service that that is putting pressure, particularly on the Democratic Party. I don't think the Republican Party is listening at all to people who are pushing and leading big campaigns for Medicare for all, like the National Nurses United are, or listening to reparations efforts. And there's Green New Deal campaign efforts across the country. Like that's very, it's for people who feel conflicted in the Democratic Party, there's a really important role for them to play, in these issue movements that can play a role in putting pressure on the party. I think is really, really important and valuable. And then we can come together as a coalition, ideally, when we need to buttress democracy and can agree on some of these issues or find common ground through compromise that moves us forward. Obviously not to where many of us on the call would want to be, but can provide some forward motion. Bruce, on for the next little bit, I think you could address everything on the next slide, I think.
All right. We have some let's finish the job calls to action, and some of them are Democrats abroad oriented, focused. In September, there's going to be a DA-DNC special meeting, actually two of them, the global level and Americas, where there'll be DNC DA members elected to represent us in the DNC. There are nominations possible also from the floor of the meeting, which is going to take place on September 9th. And right now, starting at the end of this week on September 2nd, there will be information and question and answer sessions, two of them on September 2nd, one that's starting at 4 a.m. Eastern time, a little less friendly for our friends in the Americas, but in the EMEA and Asia Pacific regions, good times. Then there'll be another one that starts a little later that day that is friendlier for people in the Americas and in the EMEA regions. And we're going to put the links to those items as a part of the slide deck in our chat box again. So in case you haven't RSVP'd for those information, question and answer sessions on September 2nd, we strongly encourage you to do so. Then that's September 2nd, 1 week later on September 9th, there'll be the actual DPCA meeting, and it will start at 6 a.m. Eastern time with the resolutions and DNC global member election, resolutions that were not considered at our AGM back in June in Washington, D.C. will be considered, and we encourage you very much to support our proDA resolutions. Please, when you look at the slideshow, click on that link to see the ones that we are especially endorsing. And immediately following that meeting on September 9th, there'll be an Americas Regional meeting where there'll be that second Americas Regional DA-DNC member elected. Then on September 13th, our Congressional Progressive Caucus will be holding a special event encouraging us to intensify our efforts to help implement the Inflation Reduction Act with what is called the direct pay component that enables schools, churches, other organizations to very quickly get the support that is available from the federal government, so that there's not a 6-month or 1 year or a loan with repayment necessary, something that can happen very quickly, so that in places, once again, I'm thinking of Champaign, Illinois, where this summer I saw that a really big Methodist church in Champaign has on its south side of the church a huge PV installation. And that's happening in churches, schools, other public buildings all over the United States. The Congressional Progressive Caucus wants to help us to help people in communities all over the United States understand how that can work. Then April 15th to the 17th, holy moly, there are going to be humongous end fossil fuels marches all over the world. And you can see a calendar and a map of where those events are going to take place. On the 15th, I'll be participating in a Fridays for Future march here in Vienna, Austria. There'll be a humongous march on September 17th in New York City. Please, please take a look at those events, participate, and talk to friends and family members all over the world, encouraging them to participate in events that are pointing toward that September 20th Climate Ambition Summit in New York City for the United Nations. Also, please volunteer for proDA. Click on that link and you'll go straight to the form that allows you to do that. We have so much work to do as we decide what races are important, what issues are important, as we begin to start looking at the candidates. And please also join state teams focusing on the state where you vote in the United States, where there are excellent, excellent initiatives going on. Finally, that 2024 DNC convention, which I think is going to be taking place in Chicago, Illinois. We must send progressive delegates to that convention. The upcoming DNC elections will determine 2 of our DA convention delegates. We believe that proDA leaders must continue to participate in a state Democratic Party progressive network to elect progressive delegates, develop a progressive platform for the 2024 convention. If you would like to support this project, please email us at proDA@democratsabroad.org. So often in meetings like this, you get the last word to fill in the blanks where I have omitted something. Would you like to do that again today?
I can't think of anything you left out, Bruce. It was an interesting conversation and a lot of different opinions and open expression, which I think is really great that that we can talk that way here and understand what especially I'm thinking of the folks who are feeling like they need more to really get on the Biden bandwagon. But of course, there's lots of other candidates to vote for, important races at all levels. So yeah, that's all I would say. I think you covered it all. Maybe someone else has something on their mind that maybe we missed today, or some other upcoming events to promote.
That sounds like a great idea. Normally, meetings like this end after 90 minutes. And as it just so happens, we would have 5 minutes left for others to chime in with maybe information about what is going on with state teams or other events. Oh, Antar, might you be willing just to announce again the next reparations task force event that is coming up in a few days, right?
Hi, Bruce. Yes. Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, we're gonna have another meeting on August 31st at, if I'm not mistaken, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be discussing, the latest successes and trends in the reparative justice movement in America, and how the national movement is going to reconfigure itself as we're heading into the election season for Joe Biden. So, the game plan's somewhat changing. A long-term strategy is being developed, and we can discuss where Democrats abroad will figure into this national and really international campaign for justice. So yeah, please join if you're interested. We're currently looking for people who want to do advocacy, who want to help further this cause. Education is cool, it's fun, it's nice, but really applying that education and really twisting the arm of the Biden administration to do its damn job is what we're all about. So join us if you'd like to learn more. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Antar. I'll be there. And we still have a couple of minutes with Mohammed.
Yeah, so I'm coming here right now as the steering committee member for the Global Youth Caucus. We are holding a event after the second GOP primary debate. We're holding a spin room the day after on September 28th at around 2 p.m. New York time. So it will be, I believe, 8 p.m. Berlin time. And everybody is welcome. We'll be having a panel of different caucuses. I hope the proDA will come, leadership will come. And we talk about what they said, right, and how we can defeat Republicans coming 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. And it might not be possible, but if you can find the link to the RSVP for that event and can put it in the chat, that would be great. Okay. Would anybody else like to chime in with what could be the last word? Well, I'll raise my hand.
Word.
Well, Sharon Ann, would you like to say something? All right. I want to take the final minute to thank everyone in participating, what I also to consider to be a great discussion. I'm thankful to so many of you who unmuted, raised your hand, and contributed to the discussion. And this is, in a sense, an end of the summer kickoff to a fall series of proDA events that we think is going to be very, very exciting. We hope that you stay tuned, engage with us, and that we figure out a way to finish the job in 2024, building our momentum at the end of 2023 and moving into 2024 with a lot of energy. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good rest of the day wherever you are.
Hi, everybody.